Hello BookTube. Today I'm going to be doing the You Know What You Need Ice Cream and Books tag. This tag was created by Margaret Pinard and I saw it on Book Chat with Pat. I will leave links to both channels in the show notes down below, as well as a list of books mentioned. So let's get started. Prompt number 1, vanilla, is actually a tropical orchid. Give us a book with a flower on the cover, and for a bonus, tell us what kind of flower. So for this prompt, I'm going to go with Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico, translated from the Italian by Sophie Hughes. I believe the flowers are either lilies or some kind of orchid. So Perfection is about an Italian couple living in Berlin in the 2010s. They work as freelance web designers, and the novel just tells their life in a very interesting way. Took me a little bit to get into it, but I did come to enjoy Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico. Prompt number 2, Mississippi Mud. The chocolatiest chocolate, evoking the mud of the river shaping the southern United States. And I've never heard of it. This is one of the ice cream flavors that Margaret mentions that I have never actually heard of. So the prompt question is, pick a book set in the South of any country or a story shaped by a river. For this prompt, I'm going to go with Pat and select Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. This novel is about a rebellious teenager, Huckleberry Finn, who, in order to escape his abusive father, fakes his death and intends to run to the wilderness. While he's hiding out on an island in the Mississippi River, he comes across Jim, an escaped slave, and together the two aim to escape to freedom by rafting down the Mississippi River. Prompt number 3, Swiss Orange Chip, another flavor I am unfamiliar with. So Margaret describes it as her favorite flavor at Slow Made Ice Cream, a local place that closed long ago. Give us a book you remember from childhood but no one else does. For this prompt, I'm going to go with The Last of the Really Great Wangadoodles by Julie Edwards. If memory serves, this is a children's fantasy about a pair of siblings who find themselves traveling to a fantasy world due to the machinations of their uncle. And in this fantasy world, they help a strange creature called a Wangadoodle do something. It has been a very long time since I read it. Probably something on the order of 35 years, give or take. So I don't remember much about it, but I have never heard the novel talked about here on BookTube. So I'm assuming it's been forgotten by everyone but me. Prompt number 4, Peppermint, another flavor I'm unfamiliar with, is proven to refresh the mind and spirit. Choose a red book that was refreshingly unique. For this prompt, I'm going to go with one of my favorite books from this year so far, The Remembered Soldier by Anjet Daanje, translated from the Dutch by David McKay. This is a novel about a veteran of World War I who is suffering from amnesia. So at the beginning of the novel, he is known as Noon Markham because he was discovered wandering around the battlefield of Markham at noon. However, 5 years after the end of the war, a woman named Julian Coppens comes to the asylum where Noon is living and claims him as her husband Almond. And the monks at the institution allow her to take Noon and try to reintegrate him into their life together. However, things aren't quite what they appear to be, and slowly Noon Almond begins to question Julian's version of events. And slowly, like a developing photograph, as I think Cole Grissom has described this novel, the truth, or something like the truth, begins to reveal itself. And in the end, Almond must decide who he wants to be once he has sort of regained his memories. This is a brilliant novel. I adore it so much. Prompt number 5. Moose tracks. Yet another flavor I am unfamiliar with. Margaret describes it as a great way to get Reese's peanut butter cups without buying the candy. Show us a book that was part of a recognizable trend. So most of the books I've selected for this tag are either literary fiction or canonical works, but this one. So I went to the hall to my what's left of my science fiction and fantasy collection, which can still use with some pruning, and selected an anthology of sword and sorcery, Swords and Dark Magic, edited by Jonathan Strahan, who, at least in the 2000s and 2010s, seems to have been editing everything, and Lou Anders. So this is a anthology that collects a number of relatively new works of sword and sorcery. Sword and sorcery is a rather unloved subgenre of fantasy, although it does have its adherents. But the thing with sword and sorcery is it periodically comes into fashion. And in the mid and late 2000s was one of the periods when sword and sorcery began to come into fashion for a little bit. Sword and sorcery comes into fashion for a few years and then falls out of favor. Although its adherents yearn for new works of sword and sorcery, it just takes the publishing world quite a while to notice it. And then you'll get a glut, and then it's back to they go out of fashion again. So I went with this. And it's a pretty good anthology, all things considered. I'm currently not particularly into, I have fallen out of love with science fiction and fantasy, so I'm probably a bit more critical than I could be, but yeah. Okay, moving on to prompt number 6. Coffee. which I've never tried because I despise coffee. So how it's a classic, I don't know, but okay. And coffee can also be apparently very sophisticated in its flavor profile. So name a red book that was so sophisticated you doubt your understanding of it. For this prompt, I'm going to go with a book that I just read. And it is one with which I had some unfinished business. And that is Kairos by Erpenbeck, translated from the German by Michael Hofmann. Kairos is a novel about a young woman, Katharina, who falls in love with a much older man, Hans, in the waning years of the German Democratic Republic, or East Germany. So the novel tells the story of the beginning of their relationship, the heady early months of the relationship, the various betrayals that take place, and the slow collapse of the relationship as the German Democratic Republic itself begins to collapse and in the early 1990s merge with the Federal Republic or West Germany to form unified Germany. This novel is amazing, and I am not entirely sure I quite understand it. I really enjoyed reading it, but not entirely sure I understood it. Prompt number 7. Lemon was probably original to China, which everything seems to be. But Margaret always associated it with Sorrento on the southern coast of Italy. So the prompt is, show us a book set in a Mediterranean country. Before I do that, I am familiar with lemon. I have had lemon ice cream. So for this prompt, I'm going to go with not a book from Italy, but a book from France. The Beginners by Serre, translated from the French by Mark Hutchinson. I have not read this novel yet. I would love to. I'm hoping I can fit it in somewhere with Shorty September, which is coming up. Obviously, there is one of the prompts for which this novel would work, but I'm hoping I can get one of the other prompts as well, because I would like to read a few more works of translated literature, because I'm definitely on a translated literature kick at the moment. Moving on to prompt number 8. Mint in chip. I've heard of, but it is not one for which I would want to eat. Can be green or white, but Margaret grew up with green and it's her favorite color. So give us a book about the climate, whether fiction or nonfiction. I had thought about going with 2 books for this prompt, one fiction, one nonfiction, but I decided to go with just one book, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This novel is about a family of Oklahoman farmers, the Jodes, who during the Great Depression migrate from their farms in Oklahoma to California in search of a better life. The reason why the Jodes migrate is because of the Dust Bowl. In the 1930s, there was a climatic event in which the soil of the Plain States dried out and effectively became dust, and with storms and stuff, basically you had massive dust storms, which ruined the soil and made farming in Oklahoma untenable for small-scale farmers. Later in the novel, there is another climatic event that forms the dramatic finale of the novel. So that's my answer to this prompt. Prompt number 9. Stephen Colbert's Americone Dream. What the hell? Never heard of it. Is one Margaret Pinard has never tried. But she loves the entertainer and thinks he showed great class in how he responded to his treatment by CBS. Show us a book by an author you wish was still around to entertain us. For this prompt, I went with Yukio Mishima, and for the book, I went with, so far, my favorite novel of Mishima's, Spring Snow, translated from the Japanese by Michael Gallagher. Spring Snow is the first in the Sea of Fertility tetralogy. It's about a young Japanese aristocrat named Kiyowaki who has a toxic relationship with his former foster sister. His father wanted Kiyowaki to have a more refined traditional education within the Japanese aristocratic tradition, and so he was sent to live with a family that specialized in court poetry. And there they had one daughter, and there's this toxic back and forth between them that ends up claiming Kiyowaki's life. Spring Snow is a beautiful look at Japan in the last year of the Meiji period and the beginning of the Taisho period. So the early teens before World War I. And the final prompt, Neapolitan, is an American mix of 3 flavors: vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. It was originally invented while trying to improve spumoni, the original 3-flavor ice cream from Naples or Napoli. The 3 flavors of spumoni are cherry, pistachio, and either chocolate or vanilla. Also included are an assortment of dried fruits and nuts. And so for the tag, show us a book you loved with an immigrant storyline. I have my criticisms of this novel, and I will come back to it soon, but I'm going to go with The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. This is a novel about a group of immigrant Chinese women and their daughters, or some of their daughters, who come together to play mahjong. So the first and fourth sections of the novel are the mother's story from their time in China in the early years of them moving to the United States. The second and third sections of the novel focus on the daughters, their early life, and then their adulthood. The Joy Luck Club is amazing, and I'm really looking forward to rereading it. And hopefully some of my criticism gets fended off. So that was the You Know What You Need Ice Cream and Books tag. If you would like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged. Anyway, BookTube, until I see you next time, thank you and have a great afternoon.